Hey, thanks, Katie. Thanks, Katie. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ron Penna, an Offer Development Manager in Cisco's Global Service Provider Organization. And today we're going to be giving a high-level overview of what we're doing at Cisco to help our partners manage SD-WAN simply and securely. I'm joined today by Matt Faulkner, a Cisco Distinguished Engineer, and Bobby Verwink, a Meraki Service Provider Sales Engineer. So before we get into it, as Katie mentioned, we do have a couple of folks on hand to answer your questions that you may have as we move through the session. If your question is not answered during the presentation, or if we run out of time, just sit tight. We will follow up with an answer after the session. So let's move into it here. So in the past, delivering secure connectivity was challenging and also it was inefficient. We had remote sites connected to data centers via VPN or MPLS. We had a bunch of applications running in the data center. We had the data center connected to the internet, and then we had one big firewall at the data center that could hopefully handle all the traffic that was being pushed through it. So this setup was subject to performance issues, outages, and with the advent of software as a service and infrastructure as a service resources, it started to become impossible to be able to guarantee the performance of those applications while also protecting the users accessing those applications over the network. Then, as things started to change even more, now we're presented with distributed users, distributed branches, and distributed applications. So defending and connecting the network and the network perimeter as we traditionally knew it became impossible because there was no more network perimeter. So enter software-defined networking. At its simplest, SD-WAN is multiple uplinks, whether it's cable, DSL, or MPLS. They can all be different connectivity speeds. We take all those links and overlay some VPNs over the top to connect all our branches and locations together. And then we add some smart software that's able to constantly monitor those links for performance issues like packet loss or outages, and then actively reroute traffic based on those network conditions. Today, Cisco is helping our partners deliver managed services their customers need and connect and protect their users and their businesses with the visibility, assurance, automation, and analytics. They're all part of something that we call the intent-based network. Deploying Cisco SD-WAN is the first part of that intent-based network journey. So it allows we're allowing our partners to either bundle connectivity with services if you happen to own the network, or decouple connectivity from services for our partners that may not own their network, while still providing a secure, predictable user experience across both the WAN and the LAN. So while the traditional method of connectivity is evolving from one carrier and a single global WAN with centralized applications into multiple carriers, multiple clouds, and distributed resources. So it's become a much greater challenge to connect and protect everything on a global scale. So for our service providers, they're faced with a whole bunch of different challenges. They need end-to-end visibility in real time. They need to provide application performance assurance. They need the ability to connect many different locations. And by the way, we need to be able to do all of that for both the high-end enterprise custom market as well as the low-touch SMB market. So not too easy. But as Cisco, we're able to help you address that entire market, whether it's with a custom enterprise-grade solution with Viptela or a Meraki solution that gives a single pane of glass management across the full network stack. And a couple of things that we've been working on for a while now is we're able to do it with new flexible licensing terms for our service provider partners, whether it's with our traditional subscription DNA agreements or managed services license agreements based on consumption, which we call MSLA, or large-scale enterprise agreements. So flexible licensing to meet your needs on how you need to buy and sell the software from us as well as to your customers. Now, before we move into the use cases and some details around Meraki and Viptela, I'd appreciate your responses to a poll here. The question is, do you currently sell an all-in-one SD-WAN and security solution, or are they typically sold separately? And what we mean by that is when your sales folks, if you have an offer, when they walk into a customer, are they selling an SD-WAN product that has some sort of advanced threat management already built into it? Or do you take the approach of you try to land the SD-WAN sale and then upsell security services at a later time? Or do you offer SD-WAN and not security at all? Or do you offer security but SD-WAN? And we'll have those results for you later on in the presentation. And now I'm going to pass it over to Matt Faulkner, who's going to walk through some common architectural use cases as well as some details around Viptela SD-WAN.
Still waiting for the bulb, Ron. Here we go. All right. So thanks, Ron, for that motivation on the SD-WAN business case and a sort of more commercial aspect. What I wanted to do in this next section is to share with you the common architectural use cases for software-defined wide area networks. Just to preface this section, the slides I'm about to present apply to both the Cisco Viptela-based SD-WAN solution as well as the Meraki-based SD-WAN solution. So the use cases are agnostic. And let me start with the most common one, which is basically leveraging multiple transports in the connectivity of branch sites. So imagine you're an enterprise and traditionally you've contracted an MPLS service from a service provider in order to connect your branches to your data center, to your headquarters. One of the key drivers for software-defined WAN was to also leverage additional transports in that connectivity, such as the internet, 4G LTE, not only for redundancy purposes, but also to be a lot more specific and have a lot more control about which path a particular application can take. So what I've kind of illustrated here is a scenario where at a remote site, you may have maybe even 3 transport, internet, MPLS, and 4G LTE that connects the site to the data center. And with an SD-WAN, you can continuously monitor the performance of each transport path. In the Viptela case, we're doing this with BFD and obtain accurate measurements on, let's say, end-to-end delay, loss jitter, and then to use that information in order to drive application-aware routing. So with this particular use case of a critical application SLAs, we're leveraging multiple transports, measuring the performance of each transport in near real time, and then adjusting the routing policies per application to ensure that a critical application is always meeting its SLA requirements. That's what we call application-aware routing, and what is probably one of the most common and most compelling use cases for an SD-WAN. The second one that many of our enterprises are looking at is maybe a little more basic in some sense, and that is to use an additional transport to augment the bandwidth. Some of you may want to be more selective and more cost-effective on how to utilize the MPLS links from your service provider. If you have an SD-WAN, similar concept as before, you can build a second transport in order to connect branches to data centers. And with that, you now have the ability to maybe only use the MPLS link as arguably the higher quality link, or maybe even in some cases a little more expensive link for the valuable traffic that you have, valuable applications, and route maybe less important traffic over a cheaper link that has different qualities. This can be done in either an active-active or active standby manner. Some of our customers want to basically augment their bandwidth only when they see the primary link, however it is defined, reaching a certain critical threshold. Other customers are saying, well, I'm contracting out a second transport already anyways, so why don't I just use it? And they run an active-active kind of model in this multiple transport connectivity. Security in the day of digitalized network is becoming increasingly a really fundamental capability that any network needs to provide. And here also SD-WAN plays a significant role. What we do is basically encrypt traffic by building an overlay site based on overlay network based on IPsec, and we can furthermore then configure different VPNs for segmentation. So let's say you have different departments where you want to regulate the policies on how those departments can talk to each other, or which applications they can reach in your data center, in your cloud. With an SD-WAN, it's very easy to create different VPN topologies, creating that traffic segmentation between different user groups and securing that using an IPsec transport. The default topology of those VPNs is always full mesh. So by default, if let's say a particular site joins an SD-WAN fabric, they will, by configuration of the controller, have full mesh connectivity with all other sites. But of course, that's also a policy that you can fairly easily regulate and influence. We can build quite sophisticated topologies such as hub and spoke, or even custom topologies, in order to force traffic to go through certain next hop routes. An example in this diagram is shown here with the VPN 3. In the case of VPN 3, you see it does not reach or is not configured for remote site 2, but only goes to the data center directly, whereas VPNs 1 and 2 in my diagram are representations of a full mesh, which is basically configured at any point. So this concept of complementing the IPsec-based transport with VPNs for segmentation is another really compelling event and use case for SD-WAN. Of course, as we add the internet as a transport to our options here in order to reach the external world or data centers or even regional hubs, that starts to raise security concerns. The next use case I'm showing here illustrates the capability of an SD-WAN to also improve on the transport security with what is traditionally called service chaining capabilities. So not only are we encrypting the transport, we also have, in a controller-based, software-defined manner, the ability to insert additional security services, such as firewalls, for certain traffic. The example, again, shown here is that maybe I have traffic A of type A that is free by policy to go to any other remote sites and maybe even use the internet because it might be less sensitive from a security perspective. Whereas application B, in my example, for compliance or other enterprise policy reasons, may want to be inspected. And so in this case, we can set up a firewall, a traffic steering policy to force traffic of type B to go through a regional hub and then through a regional firewall in order to be inspected. So such service chaining setups and traffic steering setup with additional services like firewall are very easy to implement in an SD-WAN. In some sense, an example of that is guest Wi-Fi. Many of you are likely offering services, guest Wi-Fi services to your visitors that visit the branches. And a very common use case we've seen is the requirement to offload a guest Wi-Fi or guest traffic out to the internet as quickly as possible. So basically preventing that guest traffic from maybe reaching additional sites in your own SD-WAN overlay, but especially as with an internet connection, make sure that it gets routed directly to the internet as soon as possible. In my diagram, directly from the remote side to the internet. So that is also a use case that is very easily done in an SD-WAN using a guest Wi-Fi data policy. It can also be application aware. So when at that remote site, SD-WAN edge router, we apply application detection, previously often referred to as deep packet inspection, in order to filter out certain traffic and then make sure that it does not get routed into the overlay fabric that we're building with SD-WAN, but that it basically gets routed directly out to the internet, therefore saving our more valuable SD-WAN fabric connections. Now, obviously, guest traffic is one example, but what is increasingly of interest to many of our service providers to extend the same concept also to, let's say, SaaS applications. And the main difference here is that it doesn't only apply to guests who maybe do not belong to your enterprise, but also to your own employees, your own user groups, who are now trying to consume applications that are hosted in the cloud. I'm thinking here of Office 365, Salesforce.com, Box, and the like. So that traffic is also increasingly prevalent in any enterprise network. And what we can do with an SD-WAN is to also have what we sometimes refer to as direct cloud access. So basically filtering out that traffic at the site directly based on deep packet inspection, and then ensuring that it gets routed directly to the cloud provider. One of the common problems we are solving here, and we'll get into a little more technical detail in the next section, is to ensure that that traffic is then also secured and adhering to the enterprise policies. So our Cisco Umbrella Security solution plays a critical role here in direct cloud access in order to ensure that only the trusted applications can be reached in this manner and integrated into the SD-WAN. So you see there's quite a few really compelling use cases that both the Meraki SD-WAN and the Viptela SD-WAN solutions are able to fulfill. What I wanted to do in the next section is to dig a little deeper into the Viptela-based solution before I hand it off to Bobby, who's then going to deep dive and drill down on the Meraki side. So Viptela Cisco SD-WAN, I think Ron referred to it as the more enterprise-grade, flexible and feature-rich solution in our portfolio. Basically consists of multiple components. On the transport side, shown here in the square boxes, we have SD-WAN edge boxes. In our portfolio, we're supporting the Viptela V-Edge devices, but we've also added traditional Cisco IOS XE-based routers, such as the ISR 4000 series or the ASR 1000 series, to the SD-WAN edge portfolio. So both are able to participate in a Cisco Viptela SD-WAN, providing the transport data plane. With these edge devices, we're building this often referred to a transport independent WAN fabric. So we're basically leveraging the underlying transports, internet, MPLS, maybe 4G or 5G connections, and we're building overlay fabric using IPsec tunnels. So when an edge device, a V-edge router, or an IOSXE SD-WAN device joins the SD-WAN, it will automatically participate in this overlay fabric by establishing, by default, IPsec full mesh tunnels, or if the policy dictates it, maybe a hub and spoke or a custom topology. The setup and the policies in a Cisco Viptela SD-WAN are all regulated by the SD-WAN control plane, and that's shown here as bullet number 1. We run the SD-WAN control plane out of the cloud, and 3 components play a role here. We have our management and orchestration environment, which is called vManage, which gives you a single pane of glass to define the SD-WAN topologies, define the policies themselves, application policies, transport policies, even security policies, and basically have where you have a single point in order to understand how your SD-WAN is set up and how it's performing and operating. A second control plane component that Viptela SD-WAN offers is the so-called vSmart. And vSmart represents the actual control plane. Think about maybe a routing kind of equivalent, BGP processes that drives from a container-based model these routing policies into all participating SD-WAN edges. So it is actually a centralized control plane that talks to all of the SD-WAN edges, either the traditional Viptela devices or the IOSXE devices, and makes sure that they're all consistently configured with the policies that you've defined in vManage. And that is what gives us this operational simplicity, that you have a single environment in vManage where you can see the entire SD-WAN topology, where you can define the policies with the user interface much simpler in an abstracted way, and where supported by vSmart, you then have an entity that ensures that these policies are consistently deployed automatically in all participating edge devices. As we touched on before in the use cases, in the Viptela SD-WAN solution, we are thinking intrinsically about security. Not only does that imply securing the transport with IPsec as a key component and handling all aspects of IPsec with key refreshes, etc., but we're also enhancing and supplementing that transport security with the additional security functions such as firewalls that I touched upon earlier on. And I'll actually go into more detail on the security in the subsequent slides. Part of that security story is, of course, also to ensure that any communication between participating components, the vManage that I just referred to and introduced in the as cloud delivered, the vSmart, that all of these components communicate with each other in a secure manner. So all control plane connections are inherently secure as well. Application awareness is a key differentiator of an SD-WAN. The focus in SD-WAN, as hopefully you've seen in those use cases, is very much on moving your operations to become a lot more application aware, to drive towards application aware routing policies, to offer you application transport policies, or even facilitate the consumption of applications out of cloud environments, and whether that is a virtual private cloud environment like AWS or Google Cloud or a Microsoft Azure, or whether it's actually consumption of those applications as a SaaS. All those cloud options are available. I should mention here that on the transport side, we also have an edge option available of running a virtual SD-WAN edge in those virtual private cloud environments. So the SD-WAN edges can be virtualized and run in a virtual network function in Amazon, in Google Cloud, in Azure, so that they can participate as well in the SD-WAN overlay fabric. And there's no loss of functionality here. So what we've done is basically ported the functionality that exists in the physical edge devices, the vEdge routers or the hardware-based iOS XE SD-WAN devices, and made them available as a virtual network function such that they can be deployed in environments like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft. So that gives you a flexibility, and that's actually point number 4 on my slide here. And finally, we talked about this already in the previous section, is really the ability to support with simple workflows out of the vManage environment, those use cases. So it's very easy to set up those use cases, the overlay fabric, direct cloud access, direct internet access, or the SaaS consumption model. So main point to remember here, the building blocks of a Cisco Viptela SD-WAN consist of the data plane, the secure data plane with both vEdges as well as XE SD-WAN devices, physical or virtual, complemented by the centralized control plane that is cloud delivered, vManage, vSmart under the hood. So I talked a little bit about security, and one of the functionalities we recently enhanced in our Cisco Viptela solution is a security functionality that is much more tightly integrated into the SD-WAN itself. And maybe to drill down on those use cases, we actually see 4 main categories of enhanced security requirements from our customers. And all of those have different attack surface exposures. So let's start on the left-hand side with compliance. On the compliance side, obviously we have the IPsec overlay fabric, but some customers still have the need in order to prove that certain traffic is actually secure and is not compromised. And for that, as part of the SD-WAN, we can now apply an enterprise firewall that is application aware directly in the branch routers itself. I talked previously about the ability to service chain in, let's say, a firewall in a more centralized location, a hub, or even the data center. But here we also have the capability in the branch itself, in the same vEdge or XE SD-WAN hardware or even software device, to activate those enterprise firewall functions that are application aware. And similarly, intrusion prevention is another capability that we have here in order to make sure that this compliance can be met and can be proven. Guest access, we touched upon that a little bit as well earlier on. Here, again, the main problem being that every branch now has a direct internet connection by definition of this use case. And so if we want to offload guest access, guest traffic directly out onto the internet, we want to ensure that that connection does not compromise the security of our enterprise SD-WAN network. Again, here, the enterprise application aware firewall that is built into the edge devices plays a key role. But here we may also want to enforce certain URL filtering policies to ensure that those guests are not reaching from our environment, from our enterprise environment, unwanted URL sites. So blocking certain URLs in order to make sure that the enterprise network is not the source of some unwanted activity by guests. The third use case we see, and we've touched upon a little bit as well, that is now enhanced in the latest versions of our Viptela SD-WAN solution, is direct cloud access. Here, as I said before, we're trying to enable reachability into a SaaS environment. And in addition to the enterprise firewall and app-aware routing, we now also apply DNS and web layer security to make sure that the URLs that maybe our employees are trying to reach are adhering to your enterprise security policies. So we apply our umbrella functionality in order to check the URLs for security and ensure that there's no phishing or other unwanted traffic that gets out or comes in. And finally, we also have direct internet access as a security function use case, where again, enterprise application aware firewall, intrusion prevention, and DNS security play a role. And this is actually the use case that has the largest attack surface. So in addition to the service chaining capability I talked about, what we've done now in the secure SD-WAN is to embed that functionality also in the physical or virtual edge devices, and complementing the functionality if and where needed with cloud-based solutions. I'm thinking here about our umbrella portfolio in order to deliver a much more enhanced and integrated solutions. A few words on those individual security components. On the enterprise firewall side, we're working extensively with deep packet inspection technologies. We're able to classify over 1,400 applications by default at layer 7. Some cases, the classification is fairly straightforward based on well-known ports or well-known profiles. In other cases, we apply heuristics. And of course, our DPI engine can be customized for those environments where you maybe have a homegrown app. On the intrusion protection side, we're trying to secure the network from outside attacks. So here, our Talos group is a key component in helping to protect your network from outside intrusion. We have the ability to blacklist, the whitelist traffic, and to update the security profiles and signatures on a real-time basis. URL filtering, that built-in capability to do URL filtering is based on basically, again, a classification of those URL filters. So we have the ability to block outgoing URL requests. That can be grouped into different application groups. Let's say you want to restrict for certain users gaming traffic or Netflix video traffic during working hours. You don't need to specify each and every URL, but there's a group for that. We also have the ability here to work with reputation scores in order to have a real-time and updated way of making sure that the policies are adhere to the latest standards. And on the cloud security side, we're basically making use of Cisco Umbrella as a key component. So all of these functions are now standard built into our SD-WAN solution out of the same vManaged single pane of glass environment that I introduced earlier on. So before I hand it off to the Meraki side, just an additional word on vManage. One of its components, in addition to the single pane of glass operations that we have for our SD-WAN, is vAnalytics. So we're basically focusing on giving you real-time rich analytical insights in the operation of your Cisco SD-WAN. And that means not only status on the tunnels and packet counts and the likes, but also giving you a very quick and easy way to understand network-wide in your SD-WAN how your applications are performing, what the top talkers are, understanding the workflows. So that is also an integrated component of the Cisco SD-WAN solution. And that all is the reason why we claim and we believe that Cisco SD-WAN is able to give you the required simplicity in order to drive your SD-WAN to the next level. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Bob, who's going to talk to us about the second variant, and that's the Meraki SD-WAN.
Matt, I appreciate it. And that's actually a great segue into the SD-WAN powered by Meraki, because simplicity and visibility is actually what the Meraki platform is basically founded on. So Meraki customer profiles and everything that we develop has been targeted towards 80%. We build 80% of the use cases and features because if we were to build every single feature out there, we'd lose our simplicity. So the typical customer profiles that Meraki and service providers can deploy real easily and simply, small, medium businesses and distributed enterprises with a lean IT team typically. As well as with the virtual MX, you can hit cloud applications because you can deploy an MX in the Azure system or the AWS system, connected into your SD-WAN, and you're now using those applications and securing them with SD-WAN as pick the best path to them. You also get the visibility. So a lot of the analytics and stuff that you saw at the last slide from Matt, you also get very similar analytics on the Meraki dashboard. And the critical thing, which is why all customers are going to SD-WAN, is the downtime sensitivity. They don't want to be down. They need their critical applications to work, and they need, especially when it comes to like credit card transactions, they need to be able to record those so they can keep making money. So how does Meraki accomplish this? And what value can be given to the SP, the MSP, in this case? It's very easy to deploy, and it is essentially managed. It's one single pane of glass, no matter what product you're using, whether it's the SD-WAN or any of the other Meraki platform, because it is a full platform. A super low total cost of ownership, because you can deploy it real quickly. Matt's slide said hours instead of days. Meraki, you could probably do in minutes instead of hours, but we're not here to see who could deploy faster or anything like that. It's really about that simplicity. It does scale, and then with Meraki, if you go ahead and reach out to the Meraki team, we do a very short sales cycle because we do free trials. Demo, try, buy is what we live on. This is actually one of the few Meraki presentations where you will not get a demo due to time constraints. But why does this matter? So when it becomes a service provider, you're trying to capture new markets, you're trying to get more customers to sign up. We found that a lot of service providers are switching over to leading with a Meraki offering. Why? Because it's an all-in-one box, and we'll get to that in a later slide here. But it's one of those things that you deploy that single box, and then you're able to enable features, whether it's IDS, IPS, Umbrella on the MX. You can also add to the platform. So your offer can go, instead of just being security or just SD-WAN, you can enable both. You can also add on the products like the switch line, the wireless line. And with SD-WAN, obviously, it's all about multiple connections. So you get to upsell connectivity. So you're not going in with just the single MPLS link or the single cable link or DIA. You're actually going in with multiple circuits at multiple sites. So this gets you not only in with more circuits, it also allows you to potentially add on to sites you weren't there originally when there's another SP that's just providing connectivity. Now you're adding a value add on top of that. So you get a circuit plus value add. So it helps you get more out of your offers. And then customer retention. We actually see a very small and it's single-digit percentage of customers that actually churn off of the Meraki solution because of the analytics they get in the product line. And all our SPs are seeing this as well. We've had some SPs go up to 25% attach rate on all circuits. So they're starting to get more value and add from the Meraki platform. So obviously, how this works, we've gone over this a little bit, but people are moving away from just a single MPLS link. And I know the question was asked in chat. We know the MPLS link, it's secure. Why would we move to a DIA circuit or broadband or a DSL circuit? Why would we do that? Well, the answer isn't the fact that they necessarily hate their MPLS. It's the fact that they need an uptime, and MPLS is typically very expensive and cost prohibitive to have double MPLS links. There are plenty of customers that do, but it's one of those things that as they're looking for moving forward, cutting costs, and bandwidth on broadband is just becoming exceptionally cheap, they're moving towards picking up a second link, whether it's for applications that they don't need on their MPLS, like guest internet traffic or less critical applications, they can send by default over that broadband, or if it's for things that they just need that backup. So they pull the MPLS for their primary traffic for those applications that they want over there, and then they send them across the broadband when the MPLS fails, if it should fail. And while MPLS typically has great uptime, there are times out there fiber gets cut by a construction company. It does happen. It does go down. So having that secondary link is always a peace of mind for the end customer. And so I mentioned earlier that it's an all-in-one security SD-WAN platform. So the Meraki solution is built off of the MX, and it's one of those things that we've added Umbrella with the Talos engine. We've added IDPS, IDS into the MX, so we get a lot of visibility and security from all the brand names that you trust in the industry that Cisco's brought to the forefront. We've also added on analytics, so we now have Meraki Insight license, so you can actually check internet traffic and see actual statistics for specific applications. So you can watch your Office 365 connectivity, and if there's a problem, real quickly and easily for your customer, you could say, okay, it's on the Office 365 side, the server's not responding, or there's a problem on the local LAN, the traffic's not getting out properly, what have you. But we can get that visibility with the Meraki Insight, and so that way you're able to troubleshoot faster, cutting down the time on your trouble tickets when you're actually responding to customers. The other nice thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is with the Meraki platform, you can bring in the full stack architecture. So when you're talking about value add to your customer and the ability to upsell, you've got things like the security cameras, the switches, the wireless access points. You can add on the enterprise mobility management with Systems Manager, the MI license I talked about. So that way you go from just adding or selling a connectivity package to your customer to adding SD-WAN to that, to security to that with just a single box. And then you start adding on these other offers that you could sell on top of it. We've got customers that are service provider customers that are increasing their deal size over 5x just because they're adding on a full platform package instead of selling just a security offer or just an SD-WAN offer. They're starting to sell whole packages, solutions. One of the very key things that we at Meraki say is Office in a box with a switch. You bring in BroadSoft and everything, as well as with the SD-WAN solution. So that way you can keep your voice traffic up and running. It's a really great offer and package, and it's one of those values that allows service providers to move and scale real fast. So what does that architecture look like? It's one of those things that you can deploy and move real fast. So you have your SD-WAN sites connected with the Meraki MX, and then you can connect to another site, whether it's Azure with private cloud VMX or connect in through, so you can connect to a hub site to an MPLS. We can go over an MPLS as a hybrid solution using one MPLS, one direct internet. And what actually happens, all the routing decision is actually on the MX device at the site. So we're not relaying it or anything like that. So you can actually react with real traffic, even if for some reason dashboard isn't responding to the MX, because all the decision making is actually done on the actual hardware. So it's one of those questions that we get a lot, is what happens when the Meraki cloud management system is inaccessible. So the SD-WAN overlay on the Meraki system is actually IPsec overlay. So it is also secure from that perspective. But the biggest value is ease of deployment. So if I'm creating an SLA for a needed application, I just fill out the information. So Office 365 on the slide, latency, jitter, loss that I want to watch for, and then I go ahead and apply it to the traffic and select what uplink I want to actually use it. And then we keep stats and statistics on it, and so this is actually a screenshot straight from dashboard. You get that information in dashboard at a click of a button. so you can actually monitor it and see it. And the nice thing is you can give the customer a read-only view, so they can actually see in real time what decisions are being made on specific traffic, what their actual loss latency and jitter looks like. So they're not calling you wondering, is my stuff working? Is it what I asked for? They can actually see it live in dashboard. Now, this is also something that you could actually, we've expanded the Meraki dashboard to include a lot of open APIs, pretty much everything you see in dashboard. So it's one of those things that you can now pull a lot of this information out and make your own custom reports, add value add. We've got plenty of third parties doing applications over the top of Meraki, so that way you can even add extra programs, applications on top of the Meraki SD-WAN platform to add even more value to your end customer. So the Meraki MX, it is basically everything security-wise. So identity-based firewall, intrusion prevention, auto VPN, content filtering, advanced malware, and then you can even do high availability and failover. So you can do a warm spare for those critical sites that need that hardware redundancy and failover, as well as you get the application visibility and control and centralized management across the Meraki platform. We also have wireless on some models of the MX. A client VPN is completely built into the system, and then there's cellular backup, whether it's you use a USB dongle or on the cellular models you use the built-in cellular. So you really get a lot of value for that one single platform, and it's not an all or nothing type thing. You could turn on what features you actually want to sell. So we do have plenty of service providers that package it and bundle it differently, so they turn on certain features for certain package levels and tier levels. So you can actually build this out, and it's deployed. You can copy paste essentially configuration, and especially with the API, we've got customers deploying hundreds of thousands of sites in a matter of weeks because and it comes down to manpower is actually the deciding factor on how fast they can go, because they need somebody on site to plug things in and check the circuit or deploy the circuit. Whereas the Meraki platform, you connect the device up, it connects to the internet, downloads its configuration, and it's off and running. And when it comes to security, real-time updates, cloud connectivity, so signatures and vulnerabilities can be patched basically on the fly. Even the real nasty ones that have been popping up in the past couple of years, they get deployed and patched within hours, essentially. And so there's a couple different deployment modes when you're talking about the MX. There's the branch CPE, and this is really the branch gateway, the site, so connectivity to the internet. Inspection CPE, so you can actually deploy an MX inline and just use it to take a look at the traffic, what threats are going through, not actually using it to do much else besides that. And then obviously the hub to determine and terminate SD-WAN tunnels. So typically, I know the question came up about different segments and stuff. So like you could bring in a hub MX, put it into the hub mode, and bring all the tunnels into a data center, and then you could run it through extra firewalls. You could connect up to your private servers. You could broadcast eBGP, so you have all the routes to all those hub sites, so your servers can connect back, and then anything in the data center side they could talk to, stuff like that. So there's plenty of deployment models. We fit, as Matt said previously, pretty much every different solution and use case out there. So, and it's 80% of the features that you should need. So for most customers, this is a real easy conversation, and it's one of those things you don't have to lead with SD-WAN. You could start with, you need a security appliance and connectivity. Sure, we've got you covered. You've got a second site that's now on our network. We could actually start talking about optimizing. You've got a redundant link. Let's turn on SD-WAN. Let's talk about strategically and smart routing of your traffic. So that way, intelligently, we can use the bandwidth that you've now purchased. So it helps out a ton from that perspective. And then we do have models across the spectrum as far as covering small sites, medium sites, and the cloud integration with the virtual MX, as well as data center, where we could start talking OSPF BGP integration. And then Insight licenses to cover that. So that's the intelligence to track specific applications. We've had customers turn this on and to track their credit card transactions to their servers, and they found out their servers were overloaded because they hadn't upgraded their server hardware in quite a while. So a lot of insight and power at your fingertips. So how does it all look together? So with the Z3 model, it's actually a small home office router, but it could connect up and actually connect to the internet, and then VPN into a hub site or just connect back to a specific remote site if it's an offshoot. And then you could actually tunnel traffic to a core site across an MPLS all the way back to your hub and connect all the sites together, whether it's a small site, a medium site, or large sites. And this is really where the distributed enterprise comes together on the platforms. And with that, I'm going to actually pass it back over to Ron, as he's going to wrap us up today for today's session.
Thanks, Bobby. So now that we've gone through all those details, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how, as Cisco, we're not only giving our partners the platforms to deliver the managed services, but we're also working together with our partners to actually get them in market with those services with something that we call Agile Service Creation. So Agile Service Creation was developed by Cisco to help our partners get to market faster with these managed services that are a good fit for their specific market. So there's a little bit of custom tailoring in terms of products and offers for your specific customers, and also some boilerplate templates that we have that work well across all of our specific partner needs. So we've put together the tools and resources to help you as our partners ideate, develop, and market the services. We do these through not only engagements, but also through workshops that we try to bring together the different business entities responsible for product development and launch at our partners, like product management, marketing, sales operations, and service delivery, and arm those folks with the tools and the templates that organizations typically struggle with when they go to try to build themselves. So our goal through this engagement process is to take a product development and launch process that typically takes anywhere from 6 months to possibly even a year to 18 months at our larger partners, and compress that down into 90 days or 5 months, but significantly shorten that time to market for the service from the beginning of putting it together and then launching it and accelerating it in the market. So when we talk about the outcomes from these type of engagements, some examples of the deliverables from the Agile Service Creation engagement are things like a service description. When your sales folks are out engaging with your customers, what are they putting in front of them, or what are you putting in front of them in terms of different levels of service, whether it's bronze, silver, gold? What do the SLAs look like? What am I expecting that customer experience to be? We can provide you with the templates and the guidance to get that done quicker. We give you things like market positioning and pricing based on your specific service. What are we seeing in the market? What does it look like? What is it priced at? And then once we're in market, we have brandable marketing documents like infographics and blog copies, where for our partners that may not have big marketing organizations, you can just rebrand our material with your own logos. Or if you're a larger partner, you can use our verbiage, take it directly from our copies, and use it as your own. So like I said, everything from that first engagement where we come in and start to talk to you about delivering secure SD-WAN, we're with you all the way through that process in terms of the architecture, the service delivery, as well as the pricing, product development, and then the acceleration once you're in market. So on behalf of all our speakers and our panelists, thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend the session on delivering SD-WAN simply and securely. If you want to know more about the things that you've seen today, you can go to www.cisco.com/go/SD-WAN, and there's material there for both Viptela as well as Meraki that was discussed today. And now I'll turn it back over to Katie. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Ron. And yes, thank you to all our attendees out there for joining today. As a reminder, a short survey is going to pop up when you close your browser. Please take a few minutes and provide us with your feedback. And we hope that you have a great rest of your day.